Hi, this is Nancy Coen. I'm the founder of Sons.Global. We've been bombarded with questions because of the YouTube presentations, and so I just thought it's a good thing to just address a few people's questions. One of those questions is on limitless living, and I have several things I want to share about that. Two of them are testimonies from myself. A third one is a testimony from Jesus. I have been sounding out into the atmosphere for over 35 years now, and I have found that this has opened up doorways, gateways, openings inside of me, which are called the breaking up of the fountains of the deep. Much of what we're going to be doing as the Melchizedek order for future years is we're going to find that we have more and more energy, supernaturally derived energy. This is going to come by way of restoration of the dew of our youth first. That's going to plug us into longevity second. Longevity is ultimately going to lead us back into the restoration of immortality. But it's a progression. It begins with the restoration of the dew of our youth, which I am an example of. I'm 75 years old. I have 24 grandchildren and 14 great-grandchildren, and I still have limitless amounts of energy. And part of that energy comes from making the sound, opening the gateways inside of myself, dealing with all of the paths inside that need to be dealt with, and ascension experience. Because when I go into ascension, I can see what I'm going to be able to do in 100 years from now. So I want to talk to you about how this limitless energy is produced. I was in India one time, and I was actually visiting a school that houses 10,000 orphans from the streets of Bombay, Calcutta, in those countries, and particularly at that time. If the parents died, they didn't have any way to take care of the children, so many of them just lived on the street. And these 10,000 children were brought in from the street. They were taught principles of God. But anyway, while I was there, it was so beautiful. The head of the whole city was called away to a government meeting, and he was going to be gone for several days. So he asked, would I mind just staying there with the children? And I said, absolutely. I love ministering to orphans. But the Lord, in the middle of the night, woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, I want you to prophesy, lay hands on, prophesy by the gift of prophecy over all 10,000 of these orphans. And I was like blown away. I said, Lord, I'm not a short prophesier. I don't just touch somebody and say, oh, God's going to bless you. He's going to give you a business. He's going to do. I said, I go all the way back into their generations. Do you have any idea how long it's going to take to prophesy over 10,000 orphans? He just laughed at me like he always does, looking at me like a little kid trying to figure things out. And he said, do you think that I would ask you to do something and then not make the way for you to fulfill the thing I ask of you? And I thought, well, no, Lord. He said, do you trust me? Yes, Lord, of course I trust you. Well, then just do it. Just do it. That old Nike acronym says, just do it. So anyway, I began the next day, and for 10 solid days, 24 hours around the clock, I laid hands on those orphans, and I never took a drink of water, never had a bite of food, never laid down, never sat down, and never went to the bathroom in 10 days. Because the Lord is now bringing us into a place of functioning wholly by the Spirit without the limitations of our soul and our body. I was giving this testimony one time, and this doctor came up to me and he said, lady, you're just nothing but a liar. He said, there's no way, it's humanly impossible for a person to go 10 days with no water and 10 days without going to the bathroom. It's humanly impossible. And I said, exactly, because it's not human, it's spirit. In the realms of the spirit, we are completely limitless. At the end of that period of time, after all 10,000 orphans had received a word, oh, my body suddenly went sink. All I could think of is, oh my gosh, I have to find a bed. God, just get me to my bed. Because all of a sudden, my body came back into the governing position over my spirit. I was just heading across the to the dorm where I was staying, and all of a sudden there was this huge, like a World War II siren that went off, and it's going whirr, and all the lights in all of the buildings came on, and all 10,000 of those children got out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and came down to the center of the city where they had a Christian flag flying. They put me in the center of that, and for 2.5 hours, 10,000 orphans raised their hands to me and prayed in tongues. My energy totally flowed right back into my body. I began to weep and cry, and I thought, oh my God, if any prayer would ever hit the throne of God, 10,000 orphans. Actually, I can look back to that day and know that there was a huge dynamic tectonic shift in my life as a result of the prayers of those orphans. These are the things that the Lord is now going to begin to tap us into as we begin to take back our primordial position, which is as sons of light. Because the way that we were initially created was the light, which is our spirit, was on the outside, and it was intended to govern over our body, and our soul, and our soul over our body. But when man fell, which, by the way, had less to do with what he did than with the loss of a position, when he fell, the dominion was lost, and our soul and our body took over control. Our spirit, that part of us which is light and Shekinah, the reason why Adam and Eve could walk in perfect union with the divine nature is they were made of the same substance. But that substance then migrated inward, and our soul and our body took over. What the Lord is doing right now is He's bringing us back into our primordial position, where our spirit now governs our soul and our body, rather than vice versa. I was in China one time, and I was ministering to the underground Chinese home church, which was suffering great persecution. And we were meeting in a cave, and in this cave about 1,000 people showed up, which, by the way, came by the total direction of the Holy Spirit, because at that time they didn't have any phones, they didn't have any computers, they didn't have any flyers to say so-and-so's coming, come to our conference. They would wake up in the morning and they would ask the Lord, Lord, where is our meeting going to be today? And they would come in by droves, having never communicated with anyone else. And they would all show up in the very same cave. The instructions of the Lord being, I want you to go down this road 20 miles. On your left-hand side, you're going to see a stand of trees. And behind this stand of trees, there's going to be a cave. And that's where the meeting is. That's how they discovered where we were going to meet for the day. They would show up in this one particular meeting at almost 1,000 people. And the cave is kind of divided in sections. So on one section, this is so interesting. They wanted me to teach them how to pray. I said, okay, let's just pray. 7 hours later, we were still praying, and I hadn't spoken a single word. And I thought to myself, Lord, this is humorous. They're wanting me to show them how to pray. After 7 hours, they hadn't even stopped praying. So what I would do was I would move to the left-hand side of the cave and minister to these people. Then they'd get tired and go to sleep. None of them wanted to leave. None of them would go home. Then I would leave and go to the other side of the cave and minister to all of these people, and then they would fall asleep, and I'd go back to the left-hand side of the cave again. This went on for 5 days. During that course of that time, I never sat down. I never slept. You know, the Lord has the capacity to bring us back into dominion over our soul and our body. Our soul and our body are our created parts, but our spirit was not created. Our spirit is eternal. Therefore, it can tap into eternal, never-ending, sovereignly initiated time spaces. We can actually reconfigure our own timeline over things like that. If you would like to have more information on any of this, how to live the limitless life, I'm about ready to produce my second book called Walking the Limitless Life. I want to encourage you all, if you're interested in finding out more about ascension, about the frequency, about the sound of all creation groaning, about the Melchizedek order, tap into our website, sons.global. I have multitudes of teachings there that you may never hear on YouTube. I just want to welcome you all. Thank you for coming and joining us today, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. God bless you all.